So the mayor and the law director have not come back after executive session?
Okay.
We have a motion to come out of executive session by Mrs. Gray, seconded by Mrs. Neal. Roll call.
Ames.
Yes.
Bonner.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Neal.
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes.
Kroll.
Yes.
Showman.
Yes.
Patton.
Yes.
Trutchell.
Yes. We're back to reports of committees. Anyone have to report? Mrs. Ames?
Thank you, President Pro Tem Trutchell. Development has one item on the agenda tonight. It's the first reading of an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into contract with Walter Drain. This is the company that updates our codified ordinances every year. We pass this every year. I checked last year. This was passed on January 27th. And this needs to be passed in a timely fashion in order to get the bill paid so we can get our ordinances updated. So at the appropriate time, I'll ask to waive the 3-read rule and pass this tonight. And that ends my report.
Thank you, Mrs. Ames. Anyone else wish to report? Mr. Kroll?
Safety Service Committee has one item on tonight's agenda. It is item number 1, which is a third reading, which is to amend Chapter 1501.10 of the Codified Ordinances requiring maintenance of records by those performing fire equipment tests and inspections. Again, this was just so that those records are reported better to the fire department. I'm asking for your favorable vote tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kroll. Mr. Timon?
Yes, thank you, President Pro Tem Trutchell. The Engineering Committee has 2 items on the agenda tonight. Number 2 is a street light to be installed at Johnson and Keller Road. And number 4, the ODOT will be inspecting bridges. There are bridges within the city limits of Chillicothe. That concludes my report.
Thank you.
Thank you, President Pro Tem Trutchell. The Parks and Rec Committee doesn't have any items on the agenda tonight, but unfortunately I have to report from our last meeting at the Parks and Rec Board, Dave Tanner said we are experiencing a good deal of vandalism still in the parks, and we are going to try to take care of that with those security cameras. So I do wish we could get them up at all haste, because the park, we can't stop this vandalism without them out. But it's a daggone shame that our parks are getting tore up the way they are. So I'm not even opposed to it as soon as we can.
Thank you, Mr. Kroll. Everyone here well knows vandalism has been a serious problem in our park for a long time. Many times I've said before that the police can't be there at all times, so members of the community are our police and our eyes and ears. If you see or hear of anything in that park going on, please call the police department, or at least Mr. Bonner, so we can get some legislation going and get these cameras in there. Thank you. Anyone else with any reports? Mrs. Gray.
Thank you, President Pro Tem Trutchell. The Human Resources Committee does not have any items on tonight's agenda, even though I would like to report that the committee did hold a number of meetings during the course of November and December, and we did make recommendations to and had those items disposed of by council. We do have one remaining item, which is legislation request 14168, which is a request for legislation to update the ordinances, or update ordinance 80-12 which establishes the rates of pay and other economic benefits for non-classified employees and classified but management level employees for the city of Chillicothe. We are in the process of final review, and we'll address that issue at our next HR committee meeting for recommendation for the next council meeting. In reference to a couple of additional remaining items, the Human Resources Committee would like to make a request of the mayor, if at all possible, the status on the reposting of the transit clerk position. It's our understanding that the posting expired on January 19th. If we could get a status on that, and also if there's a possibility of any bumping rights that may be called into question for that position. The next that we would like to request from HR, if at all possible, is a draft of personnel policies and procedures. It's the feeling of the committee that the absence thereof of those particular policies and procedures has done more harm than good for operations of the daily operations of the city, and we would like to review that draft, if at all possible, by March 15th. And also, along with that draft, a timeline for finalization and implementation, if you would include that with the draft. And we would also like to request an audit, a position audit of the Human Resources Director, the EEO officer, as well as the Civil Service Commission Secretary. And along with that, we would also like to request that by April 1st, a timeline for being able to look at updated position descriptions for each of the departments in the city. That concludes my report.
George?
Of post-issuance compliance policies and procedures for tax-exempt obligations. Item 6, to appropriate $776,752.39 to continue the handling of brought forward purchase orders from 2014 and other brought forward amounts in 2015. Item 7 is to authorize the mayor of Chillicothe to enter into a contract with Water
Updating our ordinance book.
Yeah.
Obviously, the room's full tonight to inform and discuss the EEO position. My apologies for not being at the last council meeting when this was brought up. As many of you probably know, there's been a certified letter to reinstate Tamara Lowe to that position, and that was due to finalization, not finalization, but an update in the carryover amount to our budget, our 2014 budget going into 2015 budget. The city, when we do the budget, we have a specific number that we shoot for to reach a balanced budget. The layoffs included the EEO position, as well as 4 police officers and 5 people from the fire department. That was what it took to balance this budget, as the goals were stated. With more money carrying over into 2015, and the budget's kind of a funny thing with nothing is totally pinpointable until everything stops with the spending, with the non-spending that would be carried over from excess from the budget to go into that carryover. So we don't really know. It's a projection game as best we can determine what that carryover amount's going to be. And clear back when we started budget discussions, we targeted a $750,000 carryover for 2015. That was down from $900,000 the year before, but it was necessary because of the revenue reductions that the city experienced. So due to more funding being provided in 2015, than we had anticipated, it was natural to bring back that position. And that's why I issued the reinstatement letter on Friday that Camera received on Saturday. So how this develops going forward is going to be how it develops going forward. But she is eligible for reinstatement at this point due to an increase in the funding. So she was reduced as a part of funding. She's brought back as a part of increased funding. Secondly, there was a op-ed piece in the paper Sunday regarding the position of Karen Huffman. And I'd like to address that a little bit. The duties that Ms. Huffman have picked up as a result of the elimination or the non-funding of an assistant chief's position are substantial. That assistant chief's position that is not funded in 2015 carries an hourly wage of $33.88 an hour. The increase to Ms. Huffman's pay is $4.42 an hour. So with all the benefits that go along with the assistant chief's position, that payment of taxpayer money is well over $100,000 a year. The $9,200 increase for Ms. Huffman to pick up those duties, and it creates a more streamlined and more efficient fire department. It costs the taxpayers a lot less money. And quite frankly, I'll make that deal every day. As long as the work can be absorbed, that's just more efficient utilization of taxpayer money. Pastor Troy Gray has orchestrated a Super Sunday event this Sunday at 1 o'clock after church services to meet on the courthouse steps to pray for the city. This is circulating through social media pretty heavily right now. The police department will shut down Main Street from 2nd to Main to accommodate what we're expecting to be a huge crowd, and I invite everybody to participate in that. I see another segment of the audience tonight is represented by the fire department. I'm sure they're here to talk about the levy. We made a decision to postpone the levy till the November ballot because one of the criticisms that we had last time was we were rushing it. And I think that when we had our first levy meeting on August 27th, it was 10 weeks before the vote. Right now, we have 14 weeks before the vote. And we had 10 public meetings during the campaign last year between September 16th and November 4th to get our message out to the community. Obviously, we did not resonate effectively enough with the community to pass that levy. I think we need more time to address this. I think we need to focus on getting this levy passed this time instead of rushing it onto the May ballot. So that's the direction that I went on that, and the council request for assignment that I made today on that. Lastly, the Heroin Partnership for Progress. The Heroin Partnership Program, that's a state coalition to work with a selected county to give state aid to the fight against the heroin problem. Came down and made a presentation through Judge Ader's office last Thursday, and they more or less interviewed the principals from Ross County. They told us when they came in the room they were expecting to meet with 5 or 6 people, and it turned out it was closer to 80 people in the room, represented all aspects of the fight against heroin in Ross County. So I think just by the interest level that showed up at that meeting, they were truly impressed with that. And I think Judge Ader did a tremendous job in putting Ross County's best foot forward in that regard to hopefully have us selected out of the 4 counties that they're evaluating right now. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mayor Anderson. Auditor Feeney.
Thank you, President Pro Tem Trutchell. Comment on legislative items tonight. Comment on item 5, the first reading. This is just our annual HUD appropriation. This is all grant money which we receive in turn spend back out. It just did not make it into the annual budget request. This is not any money that the city has to put forward of its own. And consequently, I would incorporate the pre-read rule and passage tonight. number 6 is an annual ordinance that brings forward purchase orders, and in this ordinance, other brought forward amounts from 2014. The one nuance this year with this ordinance is that it includes both purchase order amounts and the brought forward amounts. In years past, at times, those brought forward amounts weren't included in the budget that was voted on. The key here is that all of these amounts were appropriated last year, and in the case of purchase orders, they're essentially bills waiting to be paid, and the other items, mostly which are capital, were approved last year, and we're just reappropriating that money for this year. So on that note, especially considering we have bills we're waiting to pay our vendors, I would also support waiver of the 3-read rule on that ordinance. While the grand sum obviously seems high, $776,000, it is spread across multiple funds, and you'll see things in there, for example, a purchase order in safety levy capital for $157,000. That's probably 2 purchase orders, but one of which would be the squad that was approved last year. So that's why you see some sort of higher dollar amounts. The effect on the general fund, even though you've got the court sub-funds and the court general fund, the general fund and the court sub-funds combined, the effect on the general fund is approximately $60,000. Which brings me to my year-end report, which I will be brief with. But we were able to close out the year last week, close the books. I'm pleased to say that we've been able to close out the last couple of months a little bit ahead of where we've been over the past, the previous months, so we're at a good pace. We closed out both December and the year. As was mentioned earlier, the ending cash balance in the general fund, which is what we all pay such close attention to because of our fiscal caution status, was about $852,000. That's a big jump from a few years ago. It's also about $100,000 less than last year. So I definitely take positives away from that. You can reduce that number by the $60,000 that I mentioned and brought forward purchase orders. But it's a number that's been healthier for 2 years now, bearing in mind that the stated goal, the state of Ohio, the revised code, is something north of 1.3 million that they would like to see us carry forward. I'll start with briefly just the bad news, if you will, with our budget, the revenue specifically. Income tax last year was down $150,000 from the previous year. Now that's for all funds, and when you've got total income tax of over $11 million, it's not a big percent, but it's a step in the wrong direction. The only thing I will note from that is that we did run the amnesty program the previous year, which probably inflated revenue a little bit. So we'll keep a close eye on that. The other thing I'll note is that, payroll servicers like ADP, at the end of the month, you either get this last payroll service on December 31st or January 1st. That can be a $100,000 swing. So we did finish down in income tax. The consequence to the general fund in that case is about $100,000. One of the other huge differences was inheritance tax. You've heard me talk about this ad nauseum now for a couple of years, but this was the year, even though the law changed 2 years ago, this was the year that it hit us. Last year we received $363,000 in inheritance tax. This year we received $12,000. All of that goes to the general fund. So that was basically our first realization of that law going into effect. And then, of course, 2013 was the last years of SAFER and COPS grants. Those are all gone. We did have some positives. EMS revenue was up approximately $46,000 from the previous year. Building permits were up significantly. We've We've all seen the building in town. That was about a $55,000 increase. The courts brought in about $50,000 more than the previous year. And we also, for the second consecutive year, received a Bureau of Workers' Compensation rebate. This year it was approximately $60,000 more than the previous year. The unfortunate thing with regard to the building permits and the workers' comp rebate is that those items fall more in the category of windfall than revenue we can count on, although I think we should see sustained building permit revenue this year. Overall, our operating revenue in the general fund was $700,000 less than it was a year ago. And that's a mark, it's a trend that I would imagine we've landed at. So, pretty significant drop off from year to year. But that being said, to have a carryover like we did, like I said, $850,000 in the general fund is more positive than not, and we'll look to continue to grow that. Unless anybody has any questions on any of my report, that concludes my report.
Thank you,
Thank you, President Crutchell. I am handing out the annual report from the Law Director's Office. I apologize for not having it last time. We had I'm supposed to give it on the first meeting at the first of the year. That being said, we've had people off. Do it this time. The Law Director's Office closed 2,656 cases in the year 2014. A total of 739 criminal cases remain open that were filed in the year 2014. 138 ALS hearings were held. That stands for Automatic License Suspension Hearings. And that is up from 120 the previous year. 70 people entered the criminal diversion program in 2014. Of those, 55 people completed the criminal diversion program. It also includes individuals who are accepted in 2013 but didn't complete that program until 2014. 8 people were removed from the diversion program. 45 people entered the criminal diversion program in 2014 but have not completed it yet. And 28 people applied but were not accepted into the criminal diversion program. 74 people were enrolled into the traffic diversion program in 2014, and that's up from 52 in the previous year. 64 people completed the traffic diversion program in 2014, and that includes individuals who were accepted in 2013 but didn't complete their program until 2014. 7 people have been accepted in 2014 and are awaiting completion. 6 people were accepted into the program in 2014 but either failed to attend or removed from the program. Last year, the Law Director's Office gave 54 written legal opinions to law enforcement officers and 26 written legal opinions to administration and counsel. Plus, many times, especially with law enforcement, they'll call us because they have all of mine and my assistant's phone numbers, and they'll call us on any shift if they have a question that pertains to any type of issue they might have out on the call. As far as pending litigation, 28 cases are defended in pending litigation, and that's up from 13 in the year 2013. And in 2014, 12 of those cases were closed. Of those total cases defended and closed, it includes cases carried over from 2013, and we have cases in the following. One case was defended and litigated in the Ohio Supreme Court. 10 municipal court cases have been filed. Of those, we've gotten 14 judgments affirmed, 1 reversal, and 6 open cases. We had 2 Ohio Civil Rights Commission cases with no probable cause found. We have 1 ongoing civil matter involving the Design and Review Board, and also 4 that are under the umbrella of our Public Entities Risk Services of Ohio, which I want to talk about later. 3 civil service matters unresolved. We had 16 bankruptcy cases filed with the bankruptcy court. The law director's office files claims on behalf of the water department and income tax department whenever there's an outstanding debt owed. Last year, we prepared 115 ordinances that were passed, 16 resolutions prepared and passed, and that number does not reflect the number of ordinances and resolutions that were prepared that were not passed and were tabled. We have 2 workmen's compensations being heard in the Ross County Common Pleas Court. The law director's office did discontinue the collection of overdue water and income tax payments back in 2013. However, we continue to prepare and file documents relating to the payment and release of outstanding water and or income tax related liens. And beginning in the year 2014, we started working with the income department again, the income tax department in regards to communicating and filing charges and garnishments against individuals who either did not file or pay their taxes. During the calendar year 2014, 147 complaints and 32 garnishments were filed. There were 55 dismissals due to the accounts being paid. Last year, the law director's office hosted 2 OBI training seminars. The first one was Cops in Courts and was held at the Ross County Service Center on January 10th. And Prosecuting the Drug Driver, which was training for judges and prosecutors, was held at the same location on September 26th. We were able to bring in experts from the Ohio Department of Public Safety, and they were provided at no cost to the city or the attendees. Each seminar was well attended, and it provided valuable education to law enforcement officers, prosecutors, and judges. The law director's office received and responded to numerous public records requests. We've also provided assistance with public records requests presented to our other city offices, including the police department, fire department, safety service department, human resources, and the civil service office. That concludes my annual report for 2014. However, I would like to clear up some misinformation that was presented at the last meeting. At my office employees, 4 assistant law directors and myself, we are all part-time employees, and we are the only attorneys that are paid out of the general fund of the city. No outside attorneys are hired to conduct city business. When outside attorneys are brought in, it's because there's a claim made to our insurance carrier. And whenever, if you're aware of how you deal with your insurance company, when you make the claim, the insurance carrier will tell you how you're going to present their claim. So they will always tell us what attorney they're going to assign to our case based on what it is that we're being sued for. It does not mean that we don't have any more contact with that case. I have worked with the outside attorneys that have been paid by our insurance carrier. I have attended depositions. I have helped discovery and with interrogatories, and I will sit second chair if the case ever goes to trial, so that I can help them pick out a fair juror from our citizenry. Finally, if you notice that the first 5 things that I talked about on the annual report, most of them have to do with criminal prosecution. The law director's office is the last part of the law enforcement system, and as such, we consider ourselves to be law enforcement, and we don't, we feel like we're a part of that group, and there's been some criticism about why we don't negotiate their contracts. It would be an extreme conflict for the law director's office to do that, considering how closely that we work with law enforcement. And historically, my office has not done that. In fact, I think you could go back probably several law directors before myself, and that's never been done. So I wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of what this office does and how we do that. And if there's any other questions that somebody might have, our office is always open. And thank you, President Pro Tem. That's the end of what I have to say.
Thank you. Well, now for reports of Council President, I don't normally have a report. However, I would like to thank Officer Newsom for being here tonight. Thank you for what you do. I also like to thank Chief Freed and his contingent of firefighters over there. Thank you for being here. Thank you for what you do. These guys can save your life. They do a great job. With that, audience participation. Remind you that we might be
is Terry Williams, and I reside at 371 Pleasant Lane. I'm a proud resident of and worker in the First Ward here in Chillicothe. Many of us are here tonight to support EEO, to stand up for what makes Chillicothe excellent. And there are many of us who are very happy today at the news that our EEO director will be returned to her job very soon. What is frustrating in this mess is to know that she had to be removed from her job to begin with. That she was summarily dismissed, according to reports in the media, due to lack of funds. And now, after we hear an explanation that $750,000 was not enough money, but $850,000 was plenty of money, she's being recalled to her job. Now, what's frustrating is to know that there's a person involved in this mess. There is a person who had to pack up her personal belongings, who had to clear out her office of 20 years, who had to move everything that she had out and away and go through a public separation from the city, who is now being recalled. And that's very frustrating, particularly to those of us who know what it's like to have a parent or a friend or a family member recalled to work. It's a very stressful position indeed. What's also very frustrating out of this is when we begin to ask questions about why our EEO director was laid off to begin with, we've gotten quite a few interesting answers. Our EEO director has made it clear that she was laid off after a civil service commission hearing in which she spoke out against what she believed to be an illegal hiring practice in part of this city. That on November 17th, she spoke out against what was the illegal hire, in her opinion, as EEO director, of a woman by the name of Chillicothe, who is serving currently in the transit department of transit. I went to our HR director, who happens to also be our civil service secretary, who happens to also currently be the EEO fair housing officer for the city, to ask about minutes for this particular meeting. And this is what I was provided with. For those who aren't able to see, I was provided with about 7 lines of notes. It seems there are no minutes for this public hearing. There are no minutes for the civil commission for that particular date. No minutes at all. So I asked for the minutes that corresponded to the next regular meeting, because surely there had to be something in that particular set of minutes about not having minutes from the previous month. Sadly, there's nothing in there in the December minutes. Nothing about passing the November minutes and approving them. Nothing about approving the October minutes, which apparently were never approved, because we don't have minutes for them. No information at all. So I go to the January minutes then. And the January minutes tell the same story. There's no approval of the previous minutes. So now we're left with 3 months of Civil Service Commission hearings with no approved minutes. We're left with a critical meeting in which our EEO director claimed she stood up for fair hiring practices here in the city and then was retaliated against by receiving a firing notice afterwards that we don't have any information for. And then we begin to go back and look through previous minutes, and we find that even as far back as March, in the Civil Service Commission, our EEO director was advocating for a fair hiring practice in this position which she felt was unfairly hired into. And now we find out, as was mentioned by Councilwoman Gray, that there's been a posting of this position because we should have posted it to begin with, but we didn't do that. It was appointed under a temporary provision, a 120-day provision, and then we didn't post the position after that temporary provision expired. So now we're posting it quite a long way afterwards in an issue that's clearly a problem for the Civil Service Commission. Because of all of this work, because of all of these problems, it appears to me, as a member of the citizenry, that our EEO director might have a claim. That her claim might have some traction. That she may be going back into a position with an administration that's openly hostile to her. And I hate to have to say that standing here. But in this place, we have got to understand that keeping EEO, keeping this person in this position, is not just about the position now. It's become about something much more. We're going to keep asking questions, and hopefully we get some answers around what exactly it was that caused the mayor to dismiss this woman from her position, even though he had $750,000 to keep an $85,000 position, to dismiss this position due to lack of funds. I hope council will join us in asking those questions and seeking those answers, because we will find those answers no matter how long we must seek. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Yes, my name is Robert Hitchens. I reside at 446 Johnson Road here in Chillicothe, also employed within the city limits down on 101 South MacArthur Street with Annixter Faster. Pro Tem President Treshel, to all the elected officials here, I just come standing to not only to echo what Mr. Williams has just said, but to add a few other things. I may have more information that we, as a family, and all of you know that Tamara is my sister, and I stood here on a few occasions and said that she could fight her own battles. Unfortunately, she's had to get representation to fight her own battles. To our law director, Rutherford, I think she was alluding to some of the comments that maybe Tamara had said, and maybe she was misspoken in some of them, but surely I think all of us could agree that we continue to have issues, that we have to bring lawyers into the city to deal with situations that are personnel related. It's totally unacceptable. I said on multiple occasions that we became a laughingstock regionally and in many cases outside of the Midwest, the people that I discuss and hear from on a regular basis what's going on in Chillicothe. What's sad is that today we get a press release. That is a facade. It's an embarrassment. It makes me wonder, did we hire out a consultant on public relations? Because Tamara wasn't let go because of money, and she wasn't brought back because of money. She was brought back because stand up for EEO. She was brought back because of some of the private meetings that were held with the mayor. She was brought back because of some of the discussions with clergy and others in the community that stood up. She was brought back because some of the council members, and I applaud you, have put resolutions on the table that may come forth. This situation didn't start with the budget. It started over 2 years ago in 2013 and maybe before that. And I don't want to come here week after week and have to bring them out. An attorney may have to. The real fact is you do not, sir, want to have a civil service hearing on Friday because these facts will start coming out. Tamara has been retaliated against. It just didn't start with the issue with civil service and that job down in transit. I sat in private meetings with the mayor, and I know some of these situations is a shame. Just call a spade what it is, a spade. If you have a problem with a person, tell them and try to eliminate it. We have this whole issue of a levy, and I want it to pass for our firefighters. It's a shame that we didn't hit the street running for our firefighters and police. But what does EEO have to do with a levy that didn't pass? What I read in the paper was if the levy didn't pass, there would have to be cuts, there would be stations closed, and there would be tough cuts. But who got cut other than a 21-year employee and some firefighters and police officers that I still don't have the facts right of who got cut and who didn't get cut. It's a facade when you put in the paper to try to grandstand in front of the community and a regional audience to say that this thing is okay. Sir, it is not okay. This fight will continue. For those of you that watch Selma, you know that there was a fight and there was marches. We don't need to march because we march right here every Monday until we get better leadership in this community. I told each one of you 2 weeks ago, I hold you accountable, and I still will hold you accountable. This is a facade. She was wrongfully treated, the way she was let go, not even the decent enough to have a decent meeting, other than to hand someone a letter. She was mistreated by being moved to the transit building, when then told that it was for her safety, after she was laughed at on WBNS News about a situation with the former police chief. But now all of a sudden it's better for you to be down there without telephones for over 30 days. This is the stuff that the citizens need to know. This wasn't about a budget. Had nothing to do with the budget. It had to do with not wanting the position or the person. We have got to position back. That's process one. Now process two has to be take care of the person that was in the position. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else have anything to say?
My name is Ryan Wade. I reside at 682 North Malone Road. I am also president of the local firefighter association.
Sir, I'm sorry. Could you give your name and your address again slowly? I'm sorry.
That's right, Ryan Wade, 682 North Malone Road.
Thank you, sir.
I'm president of the local firefighter association.
Thank you.
On Friday, council members, mayor, received a proposal for a fire levy. I'm here tonight to urge council to consider this fire levy. This levy is very much needed by the fire department. Currently, our minimum staffing is at 8. Those of you that attended our fire ops back in October know what that means. Know that 8 people is not enough. We're currently we're currently running short on our fire trucks. We're running short on our medic trucks. We just don't have enough people. We're sending out more calls to mutual aid than we were before. And as you guys know, that leads to decreases in EMS revenue, calls that we're not able to take. Our staffing levels around here have always been low, but now they're dangerously low. And it's dangerous for the citizens, and it's dangerous for us. One big thing that I'd like to pass on with this levy is the SAFER grant opens on February 9th. Those not familiar, the SAFER grant pays for firefighters for a 2-year period. And then that's all based on need, and there's all kinds of factors go into that application. Priorities of the SAFER grant: rehiring and laying off firefighters. We have that. Retention of firefighters facing imminent layoff. That's a second priority. And then third priority is hiring new firefighters. One big piece of that puzzle is having a plan in place to sustain after you receive a grant. Putting this levy on the ballot in May will give us a plan to sustain. Will make our application for a SAFER grant look that much better. I sat in on a lecture from a chief up in Sandusky, Ohio. Was a FEMA grant reader. He read SAFER grants for years for FEMA, and these are the things that he pointed out to us. Those are the things they look for, are the be able to sustain and the need. We have the need, we don't have the plan to sustain, and that's what we need right now. One of the drawbacks I've heard about the levy is the money doesn't come in until January 1st. Projected award start dates for the SAFER grant, June 1st, and they will end the final award will be handed out September 30th. So while a successful levy money would not be seen until the 1st of January, SAFER grant money will be seen this summer. Which means we'll be able to get those guys in, get them hired. It'll get us moving towards meeting NFPA standards that are another big element in the success of your SAFER grant. Available funding for this year, $340 million, and it's projected to have 300 awards. One of the other things that I've heard about the SAFER grant is that SAFER grants are one of the big cities now. Well, in 2013, Hebron, Ohio received a SAFER grant. Astoria, Ohio received a SAFER grant. Steubenville, Ohio received a SAFER grant. Marion, Ohio received a SAFER grant. These grants are out there. They're based on need. They're based on plans in place. That's what these are based on. They're not based on how big your city is. These are comparable cities. I mean, these cities are our size or smaller and are receiving SAFER grants. So, SAFER grant will give us a 2-year start on this levy. These positions are paid for a 2-year period, and I think that getting this levy on in the May ballot is a big step forward in that SAFER grant process.
Mr. Wade, you have 30 seconds.
We were told back in December that the levy was going on again in May. Here we are, approaching the deadline again, and nothing's been done. So that's why you guys received that on Friday, and I hope that you guys will consider that and get it in committee so we can hammer this thing out. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone in the audience wish to speak?
My name is Tamara Lowe, 602 Garden Drive, Chillicothe. I just wanted to come this evening and just briefly address the situation as it stands with the equal employment opportunity position in the city of Chillicothe, a position that I occupied for nearly 21 years. I apologize for my late arrival. It is in no way intended to be disrespectful to this council. However, I just left a 3-hour school board meeting. I'm a member of the Chillicothe City Schools Board of Education. We had a very long meeting, very productive meeting. I just wanted to say I don't know what was said before I came here, that someone had texted me and said that Mayor Jack Everson was glad to welcome Tamara back, or welcoming Tamara back. I find that insulting. I received an email earlier today in which Jack Everson, a lengthy email that was sent to city council members, he repeatedly referred to me as Tamara. My name is Tamara Lowe. Jack Everson and I are not friends. I'm not a child, and I'm not a dog. So, sir, please refer to me as Mrs. Lowe, and I'll refer to you as Mr. Everson. I appreciate that. I just wanted to take the opportunity to come here and stand before you to say that no matter what, I will continue to stand. Whether I come back to work for the city of Chillicothe, I will continue to stand. I will continue to stand because I will not sit down, I will not lay down, and I will not be knocked down by bullies in this community. I will continue to stand up and fight corruption, malfeasance, and bullying. Now, in the budget cut, or alleged budget deficit, I was told, or it's my understanding, that Mayor Jack Everson believed that we could no longer afford my position, that we could no longer afford EPS. I'm here to tell you that we can no longer afford 11 more months of his malfeasance, corruption, and bullying, and what it is doing to this community. And again, whether I work for this city or not, whether I do it as an employee, I will do it respectfully, and I will do it by the books, or whether I'm doing it as a private citizen, I will continue to fight for what is right. For the last 3 years, I have seen numerous examples of malfeasance under his administration. I have made reports to Mayor Jack Everson of mismanagement, misappropriation, and abuse of housing funds under his administration. What was my reward? I've been bullied. I've been mocked. I've been laughed at. I've been moved. I've been ridiculed. And finally, he thought the last straw was to hand me on November 17th a layoff notice discharging me from my duties from the city of Chillicothe. No conversation, no succession plan, no exit interview. He didn't collect my keys. He had no further conversation with me after November 17th, immediately following the Civil Service Commission meeting at which I spoke out about an illegal hire of a transit clerk. Now, I have asked for minutes from that meeting and have been told that those meeting minutes don't exist. But again, without making, I know your time is long, my evening has been long, I just want to thank all of you for your work. I want to thank everyone that's come here tonight to stand up for truth and justice. And like I said, I will continue to stand. I won't be knocked down. I will continue to stand. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Does anyone else wish to speak on another issue?
Hello, council members and acting President Truxell. My name is Officer Christopher McGowan. I'm with the Chillicothe Police Department, and my address is going to be 28 North Paint Street. Just want to formally introduce myself. I am now the new, chairperson for the city police department. I took the position effective 8 o'clock this morning, and sort of didn't know about this until 6:30 tonight. So I don't have anything to say, but there's a really nice crowd here. So my name's Officer McGowan. I'm currently on day shift, so if you guys see me around, I'm in one of the old Chargers right now. So I know Miss Patrick a little bit. We work together a couple years back when I was injured. So if anybody has any questions, please get a hold of me. Look forward to trying to work with everyone and maybe try to forge a little bit better relationship than what we've had in the past years. Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak? Yes, sir.
Jeff Capet, Chillicothe resident.
Say again.
Jeff Capet, Chillicothe resident. A longtime supporter of Mr. Everson. Way back from the very beginning, I went to one of his campaign fundraisers. I was very impressed with him. I like the idea of a businessman running government. I think it's a great idea. If we gave everybody everything they wanted, we'd end up with a $19 trillion debt, which is what we have at the federal level. We have a big problem with government these days. We've got to control our spending. And I remember this Sir Robert Bond incident where he was terminated, and I thought, well, his rhetoric just appalled me, because he acted like he was entitled to his job. He's a public servant. You serve at the discretion of the people. You're not entitled to a job for life. It just doesn't make any sense to me. If it was ran like a business, we wouldn't have these problems. In the public sector, we don't even have unions anymore, hardly. We just have a few that they compete with the communist Chinese and whoever. But at the public level, we got these public unions that it's hard to get rid of them, and they're very demanding. And I like Mr. Everson's fiscal conservatism and the way he presented his views during his campaign, and I supported him 100%. I still do to this very day. Thank you, Mr. Everson. I wish you were running again, because I'd vote for you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Does anyone else wish to speak? Okay, that brings us to old business. Mrs. Grubb.
Thank you, President Pro Tem Trussell. Two items. The first is a second request for a assignment to special committee to implement a strategic planning process specifically geared to City Council to address within the next month or two. And the second would be a request to go back to what we did in 2013 regarding our budget process. Earlier in the year. We were able to do that this past year, and I think that it caused more problems than we could have had I first did the second process with the council involvement at least by August, September.
Okay, your initial request needs to be made to administration. That's administration decision, not the legislative decision.
The first was for council, it's not administrative. That's for council, and it's to do the planning process for council, not administrative. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Thank you, President Pro Tem. I just have a question. The rehiring of, or calling back, whatever you want to say, of Mrs. Lowe, the money isn't appropriated. We will need a committee assignment to vote on that, correct? Okay. And refilling that position is basically the same cost of calling back a police officer, correct?
It's considerably less.
Not according to the auditor.
The police officers were hired, taken from 33 to 29 through attrition. There's no unemployment costs, there's no violence.
What I'm saying is the salary for the EEO person is basically the same as the salary for the officer that was laid off.
Right, but there's unemployment and there's buyout that is in the budget.
Well, all I'm trying to say is, if we have to choose, personally, I want a police officer back, just for the fact we had another shooting down on 7th Street. And that, the officers, it's serious when that happens, the state highway patrol was called in to help because we didn't have enough officers on the street. That's serious to me.
Well, I considered that, and since you asked the question, and I think that it was during some conversations with some community leaders, it was brought to a good point that the police department and the fire department the numbers are reduced. The EEO department numbers are eliminated. And the EEO primarily, when you look at the work that's done and the daily amount of work that's done in a lot of our jobs, it's in prevention. It's preventing things that never happen. And if we can have an EEO person at work up front, and I'm not placing this load at your feet, but to prevent problems, it never gets to the police department, it never gets to the fire department.
But right now, the way things stand, we don't have this, forefront of EEO on the street level. So we need to get more officers and more firefighters. I'm just saying, if you look at priorities, to me, it's safety forces. Nothing against the EEO position. I'm just saying, when you've got shootings, I want an officer.
Well, like I said, that one officer joins a group that's already in the effect.
I'm through.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mrs. Neal.
I just would like to encourage putting the street levy on the ballot for May. We talked quite a bit, and I thought that was the original intention. I know that we're down to the wire now, but I think if we let this go to November, we've lost a whole construction cycle that we should be in the planning stages if we knew that the levy had passed. I think the citizens are ready to pass the street levy, and I'd like to urge that we reconsider and put that on the May ballot. What do I need to do to move that forward?
I need to get a legislative request to the mayor's office so I can issue an assignment to do that. And we can get that on the agenda for next week. Or, next week as opposed to our next regular council session, because that's after the date that it's due. That's what we need to do and get that. So we can get it on, it's a rush job, we can get it on the agenda, waive the rules, and pass it to personal, if we so desire to do. All right. Anyone else wish to speak? Please talk. Mr. Frohl.
As important as the streets are, I would also like to ask that we consider putting that fire levy on there. The closing of those two stations is costing people a lot. We're going to lose people lives just because we cannot fund this. And I think the public, keeping them separate, allowing them to evaluate both on their own merit this time, would be a fair way to put them both out before the public. As the fire department brought up, if we're able to put this before the voters, we might be able to get these competitive grants. These competitive grants would help us get our officers back sooner. I think if we wait till November, we're going to miss that opportunity to save lives, and I would just like to see us take a run at it. I know it's a rush, and it's going to be a tough sell no matter what, but I would like to ask that we make that request.
I don't have a problem with the legislation being last minute. It's what we have to do is be able to campaign, make it happen.
Sure.
That's what, once it's on there, get it on the agenda. It's not a rush job the way I see it, but it is. Anyhow, but
that'd be fire up
by nature. But
it's an
here's the
ordinance to
person.
write.
Here's the person that has to do all this.
Yeah, these are not easy ones to write either, because you have to have the wording correct, because if the wording is incorrect and you put it on the ballot, it will invalidate anything that's voted on.
What if we use the same legislation we had in the West?
We can on the, the only thing to change on that is the dates. But, the I've seen firefighters, the firefighters.
Well, that's true, because we had police and fire. The last time this would just be a fire law.
Can I comment on that? I've drafted language to change the past resolution to do that, so 90% of the work is done, but it needs to be verified by your office, obviously, and by council. It has to go through them as well.
Right.
So we have sat down and done a draft proposal for that.
I was gonna say, it's the most time-consuming thing we did, like the last time we were doing that, just because we sweat the details, because if you put it on wrong, it doesn't matter what happens if you pass it, it's still gonna be invalidated.
Trust me, we understand it. That's why we took the time to go ahead and do that.
I would like to do them at the last minute because of that, because everybody in my office reads it.
And I understand it's time consuming, but every day the firefighters are out there risking their lives, putting their lives on the line, so a little bit of time on all of our parts to protect my firefighters, because I'm charged with that responsibility, to protect these firefighters. I'm charged with making sure that the citizens in this community are safe. And I have to have the tools and the people to do that. I've got the tools pretty much, but I don't have the people to do it. And so that's why I'm asking that council consider this and put this on the agenda, just like Councilman Pearl said, because it is very important for not only my firefighters, but for this community as well.
Chief Creed? I applaud you. I wasn't trying to make you think I didn't want you to do it. I'm just telling you how much we sweat it, because at the last minute, if you miss something, it's very...
I understand, but if we don't get it through this round, November will be political fodder. We all know that. And then you're another year into this, and we've missed another safer grant cycle, and we're now into 2017 before we can fix the problems that we have in this community. And waiting that long, doing some work for a week to save another year and a half of trouble and issues is well worth the effort in my mind. And I think that most people on council would agree with that, hopefully.
Chief Creed, did you ask for a 2%?
0.2%. 0.2%, correct.
Is that enough?
Yes.
Is that enough to get 3 squads on the street?
Yes.
That's what we're looking for.
That is enough to get 3 squads on the street and also hire 4 civilian dispatchers, and we can look at combining dispatch with the police department we've talked about for years. And if we're able to do that, we can free up some police officers as well. But that would be our share of a combined dispatch with the police department. Okay. So, and we would also see an increase in EMS revenue, which then goes in the general fund, which could be used for other places within the city where we need that money spent.
Whatever the chain of command it has to go through, whether it has to go through me, then to the law director. If you take it directly to the law director, that'll save some time.
I can get it drafted then.
We'll do that, and we'll pursue that. Try to get it on the agenda for next Monday, call a special meeting.
Yeah, I've got a draft of it with me, so I can share that with them as well, too.
Well, we have
if you guys are ready.
The street levy also. Separate levy. Mr. Bond.
Thank you, President Pro Tem Trutchell. And I brought this up and asked it last time we were talking about 1 or 2. And I don't have the answer. I don't know if the law director got the answer. It's my opinion. You cannot have 2 income tax levies on the ballot at the same time. You cannot leave the number open. We're at 0.16, aren't we, Mr. Auditor? You can't put, we're going to raise it 0.2 and say what it is. You have to say we're going to raise it 0.2 from 1.6 to 1.8. If you have 2 on the ballot, you don't know what the final number could possibly be, because 1 could pass, or 2 could pass, or neither could pass. Now, this is a very layman interpretation of that statute, and I asked this 6-7 months ago when we talked about possibly having to. So, before we go through all that work and determine do we want these 2 on there, be it beware, there's a strong possibility, at least in my mind, that you cannot put 2 on there. You can put income tax and a property because you can close both those numbers. But I don't believe you can put 2 income tax on the ballot because you cannot close the number. And really, we need to look at that before we get in there. That would be a shame to get that on there, pass it, and we can't do it. So just be aware of that. This was my understanding back 7-8 months ago, and I brought it forward a couple times then. We didn't go the 2-way, so I never got the answer. So right now, although it's last minute, I think we need to get that answer before we go on. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Did we get an answer on that double levy? I mean, did we have any kind of inclination on that from last time?
No, we did not. We didn't go that way.
Okay.
This is some correspondence from the clerk.
Mr. President Pro Tem Trutchell, I only have a filing reminder to remind the council members of from the Ohio Ethics Commission, and I put a copy of this in the packets, so be sure to pay attention to that. And it has the website for the Ethics Commission where you can get the financial disclosure statements. But they are very strict. There's a $250 fine for late filing, and they've asked me to be sure to remind you of these things, and also I will remind whoever is sworn in as our new president of council that that person needs to That's all I have, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Brings us to new business. Anyone have new business? This is Ames.
Thank you, President Pro Tem Trutchell. Council members all received from Melinda Fisher, the Mayor Secretary,
Mrs. Gray. Roll call.
Ames.
Yes.
Bonner.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Neal.
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes.
Kroll.
Yes.
Showman.
Yes.
Tatman.
Yes.
Trutchell.
Yes. And I'd also like to thank all those folks for their volunteering for the city. They mean a lot. A lot of things wouldn't happen without those folks. Anyone else have any new business? I have one item that has bothered me for a while. Our city increases in size from 22,000 to at least twice that because of our shopping here in the city. And our businesses collect a lot of sales tax. Well, we get very little sales tax. But if it wasn't for the city collecting sales tax or having these businesses, the county wouldn't get that money. And I believe it's only fair that this body, this city, get sales tax to some degree. Legislation has to change. That's what infuriates a lot of our regular taxpayers who do pay income tax to the city, that we have an immense amount of people run through our city that pay sales tax, and we don't get that much to run this. This would help us with our firefighters, our police, and everything else we have around here. I believe that we need to find out what legislation has to be changed to make that happen, because the people that are paying income tax don't want to vote on a tax levy if it's only their taxes that are taxed. They want the sales tax, and I can appreciate that. I do believe we need to make that effort to find out how we can change legislation. Thank you. Anyone else? That brings us to legislation. I'm sorry, we missed a council assignment. I got one there. Council assignment 1501, Parks and Recreation Committee. A request for legislation to accept an insurance check for $19,655.25 to replace a roof damaged by winds. Assignment 1502, Community Affairs Committee. A request for legislation to allow the mayor to enter in a contract with Walter H. Drain Company to prepare 48 sets of replacement pages for the Chillicothe Codified Ordinances. Assignment 1503, the Safety Services Committee. Request for legislation authorizing the Safety Service Director to advertise for bid and enter into contract for annual supplies, maintenance, and repairs of equipment for fiscal year 2015. Assignment 1504, Safety Service Committee. A request for legislation to accept the David Meade Massey Trust Grant to CFD in the amount of $1,000 for safety education materials for schools. Assignment 1505 for Finance Committee, a request for legislation bringing certain POs forward from 2014. And assignment 1506 to the Finance Committee, a request for legislation to appropriate various funds from unappropriated HUD funds. Now that brings us to legislation. Item 1.
Third reading of an ordinance amending Chapter 1501.10 of the codified ordinances of the City of Chillicothe, Ohio, and declaring an emergency. Third reading.
Roll call.
Ames.
Yes.
Bonner.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Neal.
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes.
Kroll.
Yes.
Showman.
Yes.
Patman.
Yes.
Trutchell.
Yes. Item 2.
Second reading of an ordinance authorizing the installation of a street light at the intersection of Johnson Road and Keller Road. Second reading.
Item 3.
Second reading of an ordinance providing for the adoption of post-issuance compliance policies and procedures for tax-exempt obligations. Second reading.
Item 4.
Second reading of an ordinance consenting to proposal number 97103 submitted by the Ohio Department of Transportation to perform bridge inspections within the city limits and declaring emergency. Second reading.
Item 5.
First reading of an ordinance appropriating housing and urban development funds from the unappropriated HUD fund in the amount of $75,000 and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Mrs. A.
I move to waive the 3-read rule.
Second by Mrs. Gray. Roll call on the motion.
Ames.
Yes.
Bonner.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Neal.
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes.
Kroll.
Yes.
Showman.
Yes.
Patman.
Yes.
Trutchell.
Yes. Roll call on the ordinance.
Ames.
Yes.
Bonner.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Neal.
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes.
Kroll.
Yes.
Showman.
Yes.
Patman.
Yes.
Trutchell.
Yes. Item 6.
First reading of an ordinance appropriating $776,752.39 for the purpose of continuing the handling of brought forward purchase orders from the year 2014 and other brought forward amounts to be put on the books of the City of Chillicothe, Ohio for the year ending December 31, 2015, and declaring an emergency. First reading.
And for reasons stated in the auditor's report, I'd like to make a motion to waive the 3-reading rule. Second by Mr. Kroll. Roll call on the motion.
Ames.
Yes.
Bonner.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Neal.
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes.
Kroll.
Yes.
Showman.
Yes.
Patman.
Yes.
Trutchell.
Yes. Roll call on the ordinance.
Ames.
Yes.
Bonner.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Neal.
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes.
Kroll.
Yes.
Showman.
Yes.
Patman.
Yes.
Trutchell.
Yes. That passes. Item 7.
First reading of an ordinance authorizing the mayor of the City of Chillicothe, Ohio, to enter into a contract with the Walter H. Drain Company and declaring emergency. First reading.
Move to waive the 3-read rule, please.
Second by Mrs. Gray. Roll call on the motion.
Ames.
Yes.
Bonner.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Neal.
Yes.
Patrick. Kroll.
Yes.
Showman.
Yes.
Patman.
Yes.
Trutchell.
Yes. Roll call on the ordinance.
Ames.
Yes.
Bonner.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Neal.
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes.
Kroll.
Yes.
Showman.
Yes.
Patman.
Yes.
Trutchell.
Yes. That concludes the legislation. We have a motion for adjournment. Mr. Bonner,
Move to adjourn.
second by Mrs. Neal. Roll call.
Ames.
Yes.
Bonner.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Neal.
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes.
Kroll.
Yes.
Showman.
Yes.
Patman.
Yes.
Trutchell.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's what happened. See, I do it to read this. This.